Before I start, I want to thank the sponsors. I think we've been associated with Salt March for about 2 years now. Always had exciting sessions, have met a lot of you, have done a lot of business for you, have made quite a few profitable too. And it's also exciting to be part of the industry here. I struggled a bit with this presentation because, as you heard, my role these days in Nokia is to help the smart devices business in India. And some of you who've been following the industry, last week on Diwali Day, we announced one of our biggest campaigns, our biggest product launches, the Nokia Lumia range of devices with our partners from Microsoft. But then, this is a keynote, right? This is an industry keynote, and I have to avoid talking about Nokia, so I'm going to try to do that. But there is one device in the house with our friends in Microsoft. Go catch them, take a look at the device. But that's where I'll stop about Nokia. I thought what I would do today would be to touch upon our industry, celebrate the fact that we are part of the biggest industry, largest growing industry on this planet. Look at ecosystems, the emergence of ecosystems, and how the ecosystem have become the new strategic battleground for the industry, globally and in India. And then touch upon a few future opportunities. I'm excited. So I've been with this industry for about 18 years, 14 with Nokia, so I joke that I'm older than some of the furniture in most of the Nokia offices globally. But I'm excited to be part of this industry because this is one of the fastest growing giant industries on this planet. Think about that. It's the fastest growing giant industry on this planet. So how big is this industry, really? If you look at the 7 billion people on this planet, that was as of the day before yesterday. India contributed a lot to that, of course. 7 billion people on this planet, but there are 5.5 plus, so 5.1 or 5.2 billion subscriptions. Imagine the 5 plus billion subscriptions, mobile subscriptions. 7 billion people on this planet. Compare that to the number of PCs on this planet. 1 billion. Desktops, iPads, tablets, laptops, 1 billion in total. There are 5 billion mobile subscribers. 1 billion fixed lines, not growing at all. Registered automobiles and automobiles in use, again 1 billion only. So the mobile industry dwarfs all the other industries around us. Of course, the subscriptions, some people have multiple subscriptions, so unique mobile subscribers are still 3 plus billion, 3.1 if I'm not wrong. So that's again, this is one of the biggest industries, that's the fastest growing giant industry on this planet. It's huge. Number of devices growing by leaps and bounds. Amazing number of devices out there in the market. 4 billion plus devices. I think we should celebrate the fact that we're part of this fast growing industry. It just dwarfs all other industries. Mobile has become more than just a communications tool. So I'm not going to get into where you can use mobile, but I think everybody in this audience knows. Healthcare, education, entertainment, and so on and so forth. Mobile is our gateway to the universe. I mean, that's as simple as you can get. There's a factoid here. So amongst those 4 billion users of devices, an average person, so this is average, this is not everybody here, but typically the highest users, or the most users in this segment, look at the devices, glance at the devices at least 100 plus times a day. That's what, 5 odd minutes. Every 5 odd minutes, somebody's glancing at their own device. Because that's become a part of us. Another factoid here. It's a $1 trillion industry. Guess what? Everybody wants to be a part of it. Of course, the telcos have been there. Device vendors like us have been there. Media companies, music, entertainment, television, games, and the list can go on and on and on. Everybody wants to be a part of this $1 trillion industry. It's 2% of the world's GDP. Puts things in perspective. There's a saying by Eric Schmidt, the guy from the ex-CEO of Google. He used to say mobile first, mobile first, mobile first. Now he says, put your best people on mobile. There's no reason why not, right? Fastest growing industry, dwarfs all other industries, and is a $1 trillion industry. Everybody wants a piece of it. Put your best people on mobile. Let's look at the India numbers, by the way. So I left the country when it was 3 million subscribers. I remember we used to celebrate, we reached 500,000. We reached 750,000. 2000, we were 3 million subscribers. You can see the number estimated for 2011. The orders of magnitude of growth and the business potential and the business that's been created and the potential for us. On the handset volume 2, again, from 5 million devices. And if you remember those days, those devices are big, bulky, chunky, but people used to buy them. And now, devices have, of course, evolved, and expecting about 180 million approximately by the end of the year. So again, the industry has grown, and India has been at the forefront of this growth. Let me switch gears a bit. So it's growing. There's enough potential. There's enough growth. There's enough place for all of us, which means it's intensely competitive. It's hyper-competitive. There are handset vendors that range from mega vendors, global vendors, right down to micro vendors, and everybody in between. And the number of handset the vendors and devices are emerging rapidly on a monthly basis. This is one industry, by the way, where, especially in India, where the dynamics of vendors or the market share can switch in like a couple of months' time. No other industry can you say that happens. But what's happened in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years is this gradual shift. It's been gradual. It's not a switch that somebody turned on and off. Is this move towards ecosystems. Why? Because when the mobile device industry was growing, the adjacent industries started to grow, the media companies, content, applications, and suddenly you were fulfilling growth of multiple industries as well as the core industry, and there emerged ecosystems, partnerships, with partners, with developers like yourself, and other value chain partners. And now it's become a race of ecosystems. And within that, it's the smart devices or the smartphones that are leading the way in terms of the growth. I think from an industry perspective, the rapid growth in smart devices or smartphones is something that we didn't anticipate. This year itself, more than 50% of the revenues globally will come from smartphones. But the volume is about 13%, 12-13% only globally. It gives you, again, an order of magnitude of where smart devices, smartphones are playing, and the growth that they're leading our industry towards. So what do I mean by ecosystems? I think everybody understands what, you start adding different players in the industry, create ecosystems, create a formidable offering. I think another way to look at ecosystems is the completeness of the offer. How complete is your offer for your consumers? So let me repeat, completeness of the offer for your consumers. That's how I would define an ecosystem. Not just a bunch of partnerships. I think partnerships emerge and disappear on a monthly basis, but the completeness of the offering of an ecosystem is what matters. Completeness, of course, has mobile devices at the center of it, but then it has application stores, marketplaces, it has social networking clients, it has search, it has entertainment, location, social, and so on and so forth. And these are all interplaying with each other. So location and social is something I'll come back to later, interplay with each other. Social and commerce work together, location and commerce work together. Again, completeness of the offer and the interplay between these different entities of the ecosystem. Let me maybe take another minute or so and just talk about some of the key growth drivers. So we look at the industry, look at how fast and how big this industry is, how fast it has grown and how big this industry is. Ecosystems are the main driver in the industry and the new trend in terms of growth. What's driving the ecosystem growth? I mentioned earlier, migration to smart devices or smartphones. The value of smart devices and smartphones is more than 50% of the global revenues. Even feature phones, they're also evolving to smart devices and smartphones. The line is blurring. Of course, the volume itself is always going to be higher on feature phones, but it's the smart devices that bring the value for us, for yourself. But the evolution and the migration of users towards smart devices is one of the key drivers of ecosystem growth. And why? And this is something interesting because it relates to you. This is an interesting graph. What's so different? Of course, technology is different, there's a great camera, there's internet, and blah, 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 blah. I can go on about the feature list. But it's not about technology. It's about what you have been able to provide to the consumer to drive that growth. So this is an example of satisfaction, relative satisfaction over a period of time. It starts, I buy a feature phone or a smart device at the same time, but because the smart device lives with me every day, because of the applications and the services that you provide, I'm always getting something new. I'm using something new. There's a new experience almost on a daily basis because of this app stores and the experiences provided by you. The value add that you provide, the smartphones are always score higher on satisfaction and also the usage. I would say the smartphone experience is enhanced post-purchase because of you. Again, roll it back to what I was saying earlier. Growth is in smartphones. You're driving that growth. It's helping ecosystem thrive, helping the entire mobile industry grow. Here are some examples of what we've seen locally. This is an example in India of the genres of content that are driving this. So again, link it back. You're providing great applications and services in these genres that are causing smart devices and smartphones to grow by leaps and bounds, the usage especially for consumers, which are causing ecosystems in the entire industry to grow. Applications, services, and yourself are at the centerpiece of this growth. There's something interesting happening also in the space of app stores, marketplaces. So I remember early days of smartphones, and I won't even call them smartphones in today's world. You should have a few applications that you would pre-burn or preload, and it's impossible to get more than a few applications, and it's also device by device, and just a cumbersome task to actually just loading apps. The concept of apps is very alien. Because those days, 10 years ago, you would just use what the device vendor gives you. If there's a calculator, that's your app. The snake game that Nokia used to have and still has, that's your app. You really can't go and get anything new. But this retail experience, this mall experience, this merchandising concept that's now being introduced, sophisticated merchandising concepts are being introduced now through marketplaces and app stores. That's causing an explosion of usage of smart devices and services and applications, and hence smart devices. The amount of data and analytics available there, the analytics available for you to gain consumer insights, to tailor-make the applications is phenomenal. You have access to that through your partners who manage marketplaces. You can tailor-make, you can do real-time dynamic store management like a Pepsi or a Coke does in a supermarket. They pay extra money or premium for shelf space. They move things around. The moment they see consumption of particular items are moving faster than others, you can do the same in application stores and marketplaces. That's the future there. This is an issue that has plagued smartphone users for a long time. It's become very easy these days, and it will become easier going forward because of the retail sophistication methods being used, is the concept of discovery of applications. Average smartphone user is a bit unsure. High-end smartphone users knows how to discover applications in a matter of seconds, and the followers or the follower smartphone users are struggling to discover applications. But again, because of retail sophistication that's emerging in our industry, in marketplaces, this is becoming easier and is another driver for growth. And a bunch of business models that are available. You're part of them. End of the day, you have to be profitable to drive this growth. And there are multiple business models out there that are time and tested. They work. Some places, they also work depending on the genre. They work depending on the device and so on and so forth. But the different options are out there. But what's important is also going local. So I'll give you an interesting story here. So I've been 6 weeks back in India now. But I've been about 14 retail visits across Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi. And it's interesting to go up to the store manager, and I do this across Nokia stores as well as competition, as well as organized trade, and ask them, what is the first thing somebody asks in a smartphone, apart from the brand? Keep the brand outside this. The first thing that people ask in smartphones or for smartphones is apps. Apps and apps and apps. I would urge you, actually, when you start developing your next breakthrough application, before you do that, when you create a blueprint, go across to a retail store, talk to the store manager, see how people buy devices, what are they asking for, what drives them at point of purchase, what kind of apps are people actually asking for, Of course, a lot of people will discover apps, like I said earlier, as they buy the device and they start using it, and they, over a period of time, you enhance the experience. But also at point of sale, apps is a key driver. So we urge you to go get those local insights from your local retailers. And of course, local promotions, local merchandising, that's the flavor of the day. It's impossible to do this sophisticated retail merchandising on stores, marketplaces, on a global level. You just cannot do that. It has to be empowerment at the local level. It has to be given to you and your partners to do that, to stimulate the growth. I want to spend a couple of minutes on the influence. So I talked about you driving the growth, but there's an important aspect of the influence that the group here and your peers in the industry have. Consumer influence. Let me walk through this with you first. I don't know if you can see it from the back, but the entire consumer mobile experience, so the entire consumer experience on mobile devices is moving towards apps. Of course, the traditional, I do my SMS, I make voice calls, top right corner of that, that's a traditional mobile experience. That's always going to be there. But now you see the emergence of app-driven mobile experiences, led by social networks. But then there's commerce, there's entertainment, there's weather, there's gaming, and so on and so forth. Going back to the different genres we talked about, the consumer experience on mobile devices is moving away from the traditional voice and SMS towards apps. So hold that thought when I move on to the next slide. This is an interesting thought here. The investment, or let's say the consumer influence to investment ratio for you in this audience is the ideal in our industry. So look at the left side. The investment levels of infrastructure, device development, and so on and so forth is definitely larger than what application developers invest. But the number of likes, the number of ratings, you get those maximum. They're maximum given to the apps and services. You get them much more than what networks and devices get. I don't know how many we get, but in terms of, this is all relative, of course, so I don't have exact numbers, but the consumer influence to investment ratio is the best, is the highest for mobile developers, which means that you have the responsibility of now managing the consumer influence going forward. Because like I mentioned earlier, the consumer experience is moving towards applications. Consumer experience on mobile devices is moving away from traditional experiences like voice and SMS to apps. With your ideal investment ratio, influence to investment ratio, you have the responsibility now to drive that influence. All right. I'm guessing I have about 7 minutes left. So what's the future like? This is a tough one because there are people in this audience who are more qualified than me to talk about different technologies, evolution of new technologies, and where we are headed, and so on and so forth. I could put up I could actually sit down here for the next 5 days and talk through each one of these with you, and opportunities are galore. This is not an exhaustive list. So HTML5, browser-based application framework, cloud computing, I mean, these are mega topics. These are evolving on a daily basis. Each of these topics here, whether it's mobile advertising or connected devices or multiplayer gaming, NFC, LTE, broadband wireless, each one of them will affect our industry, will affect us on the device vendor side, the carriers, and of course you. So opportunities are all there. I don't intend to go through each of these boxes one by one. My plan would be to touch upon what I believe, and this is my belief, of course, this is something I would like to also share with you, is the biggest opportunity of the century when it comes to new networks, mobile networks, going forward in the future. I believe this solo is the big innovation opportunity for the industry. I'm going to explain that, but this solo means social location. This is, in my opinion, the biggest opportunity out there, which may use all those technologies we talked about earlier, but in terms of an innovation platform, this is like, initially when, especially in Nokia, we had in the 90s, 97, 98, our vision was voice goes wireless. Think of it. 14 years ago, 15 years ago, our vision was voice goes wireless because we wanted to overtake landlines. That happened years ago. Then we said the internet goes wireless, internet goes mobile. You must have heard of the talk about internet in your pocket, mobile devices. Now we're talking about social location. We're talking about the real world and the virtual world and the bridge between the two. Let me explain that with an example. Of course, this is something that's happening, will gradually happen. So, take a step back, immerse yourself in this. This is something that I believe is going to change the course of the way the industry will work in the future in terms of innovation. Here's an example. You can say this is augmented reality. This is something that's possible today. This is that bridge between the real world and the virtual world. What do I mean by that? So you have friends who use social networks, check-ins, Foursquare, and so on and so forth. They give ratings to places they go to. So that's all in the virtual world. You do it via mobile devices, you do it via desktops, PCs, and so on and so forth. That's all in the virtual world. The likes, the ratings, the comments, and so on and so forth. Here, I take out my device. I look at a place through my camera, and suddenly I can superimpose all that virtual world information that you, your peers, and the people around us have actually contributed to, and superimpose that onto my real world experience. So now I have enriched my real world experience based on what I have captured through sensors, social networks, and location platforms, and provided a consumer an enriched real world experience. So I'm looking at this building, and suddenly it pops up that this, you might like this because of your past preferences and maybe your social network preferences. It's called something called the barn. On the left-hand side, there's another coffee shop. On the right-hand side, there's another coffee shop. But you might like this because this is being rated the best in this city. And it's the popularity since the last 3 months is this, because the number of people have checked in, the number of people have given comments, and so on and so forth. And then you take a look inside. So a panoramic view inside, what's happening, what's trending, and so on and so forth, what's the popular time. Now, all this information is captured through sensors that people have in their mobile devices, of course, anonymously. All the GPS probes out there, all the social networking information that people are contributing back, and the location platform that's using the smart data to present back and enrich the real-world experience. This is what I meant by social location. Now, you can start already thinking the immense possibilities out there when you start using different permutations and combinations of this data that's being generated. That is being, by the way, the more the people use it, the better it gets. The more number of people that start going, this collective intelligence concept, the more number of people that go to the coffee shop and give their feedback, the better this data gets, and better it enriches the user's real-world experience. So again, I mentioned about 4 billion mobile devices out there. We estimate about 100 million of those, so that is 4 billion. We estimate 100 million of those have GPS. By 2013, that will grow to 800 million GPS-enabled devices. The moment you start using GPS services, your device is talking to the network platform or the location platform. There's a lot of information that's flowing. But it's not only GPS. It's proximity sensors, it's accelerometers, it's light sensors. There's a lot of information that's packed into these devices, especially the smart devices. And all the sensor information that you can bring in and capture and reutilize and enrich experiences. Couple that with the social location or the location, social networks and the social usage by users, and then the location platform that brings it together as a smart data. So I mentioned this already. So this is something that is available in some of the in the offering out there in the market today, where I'm actually using my phone for navigation, and very quickly I can start seeing what's happening from the virtual world and the sensors that I've collected earlier on my device, superimposed. I'll give you another factoid. The NAVTech location platform captures 10 billion GPS probes a month. 10 billion GPS probes a month. These are probes. What's the probe? I start navigating. I start doing using maps. There's a location latch. There's information going between the location servers. But 10 billion GPS probes a month can help us predict a lot, can help us enrich the real-world experience a lot. Give you another example, and I'm sure this is something you can all relate to. 80% of the traffic congestion that we face on a daily basis can be predicted. Think about that. You can predict it yourself. Imagine what these devices can do. They can even do more accurate prediction of 85% of the traffic patterns can be predicted. Why? Because the GPS probe data is collected, social information is available, and the smart data is being computed. Here's an example. Now I'm going to go through some examples to give you some food for thought. And this is why I get very excited, because I believe this is one of the biggest opportunities, and we don't know where this can go. So you saw a guy in the red, in the green going there, and suddenly the map, there's no map there, but he's still driving there. There's another guy going on the other side. And suddenly he takes a right. But there's no road in my map system. Now I've seen, this is a probe. I've seen now two GPS-enabled devices go on a road that doesn't exist. Now I know that there is a road out there. This is collective intelligence. I didn't have to send out a car with those multiple cameras to go figure this out. I can figure it out sitting and watching and computing this data. Another example. Imagine you can start superimposing what's trending, what's happening now based on GPS probes, based on the number of people. You know, when people have walked into a place, when they walked out of a place, what's trending at that point of time, real time. And again, this is all based on GPS, the sensors, location data, and the social networks. Give another example. The best rated pubs based on what people are actually rating using the social networks, but also based on where they are, local presence based on the GPS probes. You can start actually offering that as what's trending, what's new, what's the pulse of the place based on the information that's being gathered. This is what I meant by the innovation opportunities using social location. My favorite example is the next one. So those are the ones that are bouncing are actually GPS devices in people's pockets when they're dancing in discos. Imagine the possibilities here where you actually can show, display the hottest places to be in with real-time information. I'm sure some of you can relate to that also. Next time you realize that you're jumping hard and high, you know who's capturing that and what's happening, and you'll be one of those dots. And you can see how static the bar and the entrance places are. The ultimate disco app. Here you need a GPS, accelerometer, and social information. Bring it all together, provide that bridge between the virtual world, which is all there in the internet, and Google's indexing a lot of that too as part of their search, and connect that to the real world using devices and the sensors out there. So these are some examples of what I believe is the next innovation platform opportunity. I didn't want to bore you with going through each one of those. I thought I'd pick up the one that's most important. So I got a timeout, which is good because I'm on my last slide. Sorry, that was quick. So I thought it was, so small screen, big picture. This is the fastest growing big industry, giant industry we're part of. We should celebrate that. Small screen, big picture. The new strategic battleground is ecosystems. You're driving, you're a catalyst of the growth in those ecosystems. You are the center of those ecosystems because of the the applications and services you provide that lead to consumers moving from traditional experiences to app-driven experiences that allow mobile phones evolve towards smart devices and hence growth in the industry. You have the maximum, you have the responsibility, and I want to underline the word responsibility of consumer influence in our industry. You saw that influence versus investment ratio. You have the best influence versus investment ratio. And this power of V, the few examples I had in the end. Collective intelligence, the power of, don't underestimate that. That's a great innovation platform for us going forward. With that said, I should now stop here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a great next 2 days and good opportunities for you. Thank you.